everybody. Welcome. Today I have a special guest with us for our Facebook Live. It's in fact my daughter Ruby. Hello. So just to reintroduce you to myself, again, I'm Kelly. I am the admissions and marketing specialist at Growing Generations. I was also a 3-time surrogate myself. So a lot of times, people ask me all the time about, how to involve their kids, how much to tell their kids, what kids really think about the whole process. And I figured what better way than to ask one. So if you saw our event picture, that was a picture of Ruby when she was in the 2nd grade. Did you? Yeah. With, yeah, that one with baby Natasha or baby Anjali. They are identical twins. Who knows? But at the time, she was in the 2nd grade when I gave birth for the first time as a surrogate. And I proceeded to do 3 more journeys. My last one, I gave birth to that baby the summer before her 6th grade year. Yeah, 6th grade year. So now Ruby is 17 and she's about to graduate high school. So she has, lots of thoughts on surrogacy, and you guys tend to have lots of questions. So luckily a lot of people sent questions in already. So, we have a ton that we can work from here. But, feel free when you are watching, if there's any questions that we haven't asked or something that's really kind of burning you would like to ask Ruby or myself, go for it. So we'll just kind of get started. I see that some people are already joining us. Hi, Riley, and we got Jody and Lisa and Casey and Heidi. Awesome. So you ready to get started?
Yep.
All right, sweet. So one of the first questions that someone has asked is, do you remember how you learned about surrogacy for the first time?
I kind of and sort of do, especially because I was just in 1st grade, so that was so long ago. But I still remember we had a book called Kangaroo Pouch that my mom shared with me and my brothers, although Sawyer was probably too young to understand anything. But that, I think, just the more I grew up and understood it, just because it was happening so often too,
right?
With you, I did. But yeah, I think the kangaroo pouch really helped understand, especially from like a 1st grader's perspective on stuff. I don't quite remember just because I was so young, but now that I think of it, I don't think I really ever had trouble understanding what it was and stuff.
Yeah. And Ruby mentions the book, The Kangaroo Pouch, which is an awesome book. I loved it because it basically is a story of, 2 kangaroos that are, need help having their joey. And so another mommy kangaroo holds their joey for them. And then once that joey is, ready to be born, then she gives that joey back. And so it kind of, I thought, and it seems like my kids, besides Ruby, my other 2 children as well, really kind of got that because it helped kind of cement the fact that this wasn't our baby. And one of the other things that, Ruby and I were talking about this as we were, getting ready for this about, what does she remember and what doesn't she remember? And one of the things that I tell parents all the time that are surrogates and their partners is, having a picture of your intended parents. Do you remember that? Yeah. Having a picture of the intended parents. So that way, when your young kids ask you about the babies, you could point into the picture and say, like, whose babies are these? And like my kids would always be like, they're George and Sanja's babies, or.
And like, so I remember Sawyer did that a lot too.
Yeah. Because he was super young. So at the time, I think Sawyer just turned 2 right before my first surrogacy twins were born. So, that having that book kind of helps out and kind of explains that. I think the other thing too is being as open and honest with your kids as you can. Obviously, depending on the age. For us, we kind of grew up, and I tried to raise all my kids that everybody can have a family and anybody can have a family. So it wasn't really that shocking, that there was a different way to have a family. So speaking of which, people always ask, was it any different for you? Because since I carried for intended fathers, was it weird for you that I had 2 dads that I was caring for, or?
No, I don't really think. I think I was too young to have kind of a thought of like, this is how it's supposed to be and it should only be a boy and a girl. But because I grew up knowing that like you can like love and be with whoever you want to be, and it doesn't have to just be that boy and the girl, I think I was totally natural with it and okay with it, and just like, oh, so this is we can do. And I remember it always pops up on our Facebook memories that I think it was Preston who said, or Preston or Sawyer said that I wanted to marry mom. And then you're like, oh, you can't marry mom. And he's like, I want to marry dad. And I was like, you can marry a boy or girl, but it just can't be your family.
Right, right.
So I think I was just pretty used to seeing just different types of families at a young age. So I was totally fine with it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you find, and this is somebody else kind of asked the same question, that did you find that, kids at school, like whether it was when you were in this first or second grade or when you were in this, sixth grade or fifth grade, that if they found out that I was pregnant carrying 2 men's babies, did you ever have any questions about that or?
Did the kids have questions?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they didn't quite understand how much I did. I think I'll always go back in these questions saying like I was in first grade. So from first grade to now, that's a very long time. And I've been used to that like 3 times. So
yeah.
When kids have questions, I think I just kind of explain it the best I can. And, I mean, yeah, there's people who still make fun of it or still do stuff, but it's like, it does not matter what you say. If I just want to be me and I'll let my mom do her job.
Yep. Do you think now, like, I know, like now that you're in high school, sometimes you share with people that I was a surrogate before. Yeah. Are there high school kids that still kind of don't know what surrogacy is?
I definitely think there are. A lot of my friends definitely know who it is. So when people kind of ask like what my parents do and stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm a surrogate. And all my friends are like, yeah, this is what a surrogate is too, because now we know. But I think a lot more people are getting to know what a surrogate is. A lot more teachers did. That's one thing that I noticed is a lot of teachers actually didn't know what a surrogate was too when they asked them. But yeah, I explain it. And it's definitely explaining the teachers a lot easier than explaining it to kids.
Right. But I did have, it's funny, when Ruby was in the first grade, her kindergarten teacher came up to me. So her former kindergarten teacher do you remember this story? Yeah. Walked up to me and she's like, so Ruby was telling a story out on the playground. And she said that you were having 2 babies and that they were for 2 guys. And so I just wanted to let you know she was telling people that story. And so I laughed because I was like, well, no, that's true. Like I am carrying twins for 2 men and they're not our babies. And she was 100% accurate. And so it kind of, I didn't think about telling her past teacher about it, but that's another thing that I would do. And I think I tell women all the time, another thing that they could do with their own children is, giving the teachers a heads up, sending them an email or even, if you're dropping the kids off, just let them know like, hey, by the way, if you see me pregnant, this is what's happening. And not that you have to divulge everything, but it kind of helps teachers know what's happening so that way they know what to ask or not to ask to your children, and then also how they might be able to facilitate that discussion in the classroom if it comes up. So because kids, they're gonna just say whatever they're gonna say. And also even like kids of surrogates, we've taught them a certain way and like, oh, this is like, hey, like no big deal or whatever. And for other kids it's really it is a big deal in the fact that they don't really understand some stuff. So anyway, so cool. So continuing on with some of your questions here, let's see. What did the surrogacy teach you about family?
I was actually just thinking about this one too. I think that it really showed me how far people will go to have a family, especially with our last one. They're from Australia and we're here in sunny old California. Anyways,
you're fine.
And so just seeing them like fly back and forth and stuff, and I was like, 14-hour flight, that's crazy. And I think that it really put into perspective how others could help start that family, and that not everyone can. So that's definitely why I want to be a surrogate later too, is just to help others and see. Yeah, I don't know what to add. That's how far everyone will go.
Yeah. And I think then that's actually, you kind of hit up on another question, which was somebody had asked, like, do you think that you'll want to be a surrogate one day? Yeah.
Maybe not as many times as
me.
I definitely do want to. think I did when I was younger too. I was like, that's a cool job. Like
Yeah, yeah.
having or helping other people have families and stuff. And I think I know so much about it too that I'm just comfortable not having it now.
Yeah, yeah, not now. No. Not your own now, not a surrogacy now. Yeah. And I think that in my mind, people ask like, oh, do you think, Ruby would want to be a surrogate, or what do you think about that? And, I think a few things about that. Number one, I think that would be amazing. And the fact that that would mean that she had her own pregnancies that were, easy, and she loved being pregnant, and she, things went really well for her. So if she was going to be a surrogate, that would mean that, she had a really great experience with her own pregnancies and birth. And of course I want that for you. And then when it comes to, helping others, obviously I'm a big fan of surrogacy, and, you guys have known about it forever. So it makes sense to me. But at the same time, like if Ruby decided later that like, oh, you know what, never mind. Or let's say she gets pregnant and then she's like, I hated that. Well, yeah, a lot of people don't like being pregnant, and they don't have to be surrogates, and neither do you. So just to throw that out there. Anyway, cool. So I'm looking to see if anybody's asked any questions. Again, I still have, oh, yay, hi. I see a lot of our former surrogates are on there. Hi, everybody. Let's see, what else? What advice do you have for the children of other surrogates? Is there any advice that you'd give them?
I think just try to understand as much as possible as well. And maybe think of ideas that you can say to tell other people too. Like I always, this is every single time I try to tell someone, is the cookie dough in the oven kind of thing, kind of like the kangaroo. Just these two parents gave my mom some cookie dough. She's the oven, and when they're done, my mom just gives them right back. And that's just one where they're kind of like, oh, okay, instead of trying to explain. So I think just try to explain it in an easy way for you. And maybe try to help if you can too. I mean, I was definitely younger for like trying to help out. I don't know how I would do that too, but I think if you had another right now, I'd be like, oh, do you want me to go pick you up? Right. Something now, instead of asking if I can use your pillow to sleep on.
Oh yeah, my kids, all three of them were addicted to my maternity pillow. And so one surrogacy, I was saying that I was having a difficult time sleeping, and it was so sweet because the intended parents like overnighted this big maternity pillow, and it was awesome. It was really great, and the kids loved it too. So even after, I mean, we had that like 3 years after I gave birth. Like
we'd switch nights too.
Yeah, all the kids.
I swear at it last night.
Yeah, so like, yeah, my kids would share the surrogacy or the maternity pillows. So that was pretty funny. The other thing that I think is when you talk about what advice would you give other siblings, and I think one of the biggest things is obviously depending on age, how much you share obviously is up to you, and whether that's with your children or with your coworkers or with family and friends. But at the same time, it's going to be very obvious when you're pregnant. And if you don't educate your children about, this isn't our baby and whose baby is this, then it's difficult for them to understand, and it's kind of like you're hiding something. And so it's always great, again, just kind of like when kids ask certain questions, just, like, oh, it's not our baby. Like I'm babysitting. I'm doing this. There's lots of different ways that you could do that. We actually have a blog underneath the resources section under Be a Surrogate. And if you just search books, a list of different books like the Kangaroo Pouch will come up. So let me think. I just had another thought of something that you had mentioned before too. Did you find it, because like for you got to meet other surrogates and other surrogates who had kids, and I know we had some play dates and things. So did that make that easier for you, or do you?
I don't really remember. I think I just thought of like, oh, more friends.
Yeah.
But I think because now you're still friends with a lot of surrogates too, and it's nice to see that like a lot of them and kind of their stories and who else they helped and stuff like that too. But yeah, I think when I met them, it was just like, oh, there's more people that do this too, and they're helping another family and everything like that.
Yeah, cool. And I see that Heather says, both my boys kept talking or taking mine during the pregnancy too. Oh, the maternity pillow. I know, I'm telling you, it was so funny. It was like, our maternity pillow, I think, had to have like a custody schedule. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. The other thing that I always think is funny too is, I know Ruby sometimes would get it, and Preston, my middle child, got it quite a bit too, where people would come up sometimes and they'd see that you're pregnant and see that your other kids, and sometimes they make a comment like, wow, you really have your hands full. And I'm like, not really, but whatever. But the other thing is they come up to my kids and say like, oh, you're going to be a big sister or a big brother. Yeah. And what was so funny about that sometimes is I remember one time we were at Costco, and Preston was probably 7 or 8 at the time. And somebody said, oh, so you're going to be a big brother. Are you excited? And he goes, oh, we're not keeping it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then I had to explain to the person at Costco, okay, he's right. Yeah, we're not keeping it. But it's, it's
he
just because
it too much.
Yeah, like he understood, he knew exactly, like it's not our baby, like it's not hanging out. And I think sometimes too, people will think about, how their kids will react, after the birth and everything too, or when you come home and you don't have a baby. But again, when you educate your kids, like these aren't our children, like you're not talking about, it's like if you're going to talk about baby names, we'd be like, oh, what do you think Miles and Steven are going to name the baby? Or what do you think, George and Sanj are going to name the babies? And we talk about it, and it was constantly about how it was somebody else's kid. So that way our children understood, like, okay, it's not us, like it's not staying with us. Do you remember at all anybody asking you any funny questions or anything?
Yeah. I think mostly in middle school, because that's like what I remember the most, when people would ask like what you do, and then also some of them would remember you kind of picking me up, I think, and like being pregnant and stuff. They would they would ask like, oh, what's a surrogate and stuff, and I was like, oh, my mom just has is helping people start families and have kids for other people. And then they're like, oh, your mom like slept with some random guy. I was like, no.
no. Yeah.
And then I would try to explain like, oh, it could be like 2 boys, a boy and a girl, 2 girls, anyone, just could be their own sperm or egg or a donor, and magic happens. And then
yep.
Yeah, then she's pregnant, and they're like, huh? I'm like, because I don't really know the scientific
part of
it that much. But
yeah.
Then I started the whole cookie dough in the oven thing after, when people were just very confused.
Yeah.
And asking stupid questions.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because adults do that too. It's not just kids, believe me, because people would say the same thing to me, where they'd say like, oh, like, oh, 2 dads, did you have to sleep with them both? And I'm like, no. Okay, it's an embryo transfer. Like there's, okay. And so I think a lot of times when even children or adults, some of the issues that they might have with surrogacy is just about ignorance, just not knowing how that process works. And then sometimes, when you educate your kids from a very young age, they know about it way more than others. I think the other thing with Preston I thought was really funny is at one point in time, one of his best friend's moms was pregnant, and he asked me, do you remember this one?
Yeah, I just know it's coming.
He asked me, he's like, so is that their baby? Like, is that Jaden's mom's going to keep that baby, or are they giving it back? And I'm like, no, that's Jaden's mom's baby, And so it's funny because, when you have children who understand that this is a possibility, it's like they don't even just directly just think. There's no real, I'm trying to think of the word. There's other options. Like they live in a world where sometimes moms help people have babies. So it's a legitimate question. Is she keeping that baby? Is it theirs or what? And most kids wouldn't have that. But when you have that background, then again, to them, it's not just, kind of like how for some people, they might think that, all families have a mom and a dad, where that's not accurate either. So let's see if we have any other questions that are coming up. Hi, Katie. Hi, Lisa. Let's see here. I'm looking through my questions of what people have sent. Let's see. How did she feel as she got older about the surrogacy? What questions did she have, and how confusing was it for you? Like as time went on and you got older, like was it more confusing? Was it less confusing?
No, I think it was definitely less confusing. Even like right now, when I think I've met some people who are like, oh, like my mom's a surrogate too, or like if I'm like checking them out on baby or something like that too, and explaining it, so then I can talk to them. But I think just after the last one, it was kind of just the same. Like it wasn't confusing. I didn't really have any questions about it. I think mostly it was just like, oh, what do you do now for growing generations and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And do you have, somebody had asked the question, like, did you have, like, of my three journeys, was there one that was like your favorite or?
No, I liked all of them because all of them were different. I think I'll remember all of them. I mean, like Natasha and Anjali, always the first ones, and
Hmm.
just still going to see them and seeing them grow up is like, whoa.
Hmm.
And I'm old too, kind of like
Yeah.
that's crazy. And then the second one is just like once you kind of get to like know who everyone is, you're like, huh?
Yeah.
But and I think it was really exciting. And then I already talked about the last one and how they're from Australia, and I'll always remember that one because we got to go to Hawaii with them too. And little
Hmm.
baby Alexander is so cute and his blue eyes and everything like that. So it's nice because you get to be there for the birth too. Because I remember
Hmm.
I definitely was at the hospital for all of them.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
got to hold. I did I hold all of them?
Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice too, and just being a part of the journey the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now still we get to check on them and stuff, and like on birthdays we'll send them some different things, and
Yeah.
yeah, and even though they don't really know some of them, well, I mean, like Natasha and Anjali kind of call you Auntie Kelly, and they know who
Hmm.
I am and stuff, but I
Yeah.
don't think really Alex knows who you are,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think Gideon and Harper.
Yeah. No, I
No,
don't think
but
so.
I think it'll be cool when they find out and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well, and I think that a lot of times, with that, with people are always wondering, like, well, what's important for your kids, and how much are they going to be a part of the process? And for me, it was always important because as a teacher, everything sadly for my kids is a teachable moment, even now. And yeah, and for me, it was about being a surrogate was also about, like, what is a family? How do you create families? Who could be a family? The whole kind of love is love kind of thing, and all of that. And so for me, it was really important that my kids met the intended parents, whether it was like in person or via Skype. It was, we had pictures, we'd show pictures of them, because it really is like we're helping these people become a family. And so from my standpoint, like, I want to let my kids know, like, what we're doing and why I might not be able to go to their ballet recital, or why all of a sudden mommy can't work in the classroom as much as she used to, and different things, or if I'm away for a few days, having an embryo transfer or giving birth. Like, it's really important that they know these things, especially, I mean, obviously when they're older, like when Sawyer was 2, when I gave birth to Natasha and Anjali. And I remember, like, when they came to visit me in the hospital after the birth, I was holding one of the girls, and Sawyer's just looking at me like, excuse me, like, that's my seat.
Yeah.
Like, so he didn't really get it then. But then it was also cool because, like, for us, like Ruby was saying, Natasha and Anjali turned 10 this year, and and yeah, and we get to see them every so often, and they send pictures, and for me, it's not about, like, when they send pictures, I love sharing it with the kids, because I always share it with the kids, because again, I always say, like, we did this, like, some people say, like, oh, you were amazing. It's like, it's not just me, like, my family's behind me 100%. So it's something that we all did together, and so it's great. So when we get Christmas cards and letters or school pictures, still to this day, is really awesome. So that's cool. So I did see that Heidi asked, did you talk to your children prior to starting a new journey to get their thoughts on doing another journey? I didn't really like set them down and say anything to them about it. Trying to think, because at the time, probably by that time, Ruby was in the 3rd grade, Preston would have been in the 1st grade, and Sawyer was in preschool. And I probably, we might have kind of gauged how it went last time, and asked if they had any questions, just kind of seeing how they'd feel about, oh, if we did this again or whatever. But I never would really ask permission per se. And part of that is because, as moms and dads, if you tell your kids you're doing something, they expect you to be pregnant the next day. And with surrogacy, you're not pregnant the next day. So for me, I think it wasn't necessarily that I was hiding anything from my kids. I thought that they handled it really well the first time, that I thought they'd, be fine doing another one. And I also didn't want to answer 5 months of, are you pregnant yet? Are the babies here? What's happening? So it was, once we got to the point where we were definitely doing it, I was flying down to LA, I was going to have an embryo transfer. Yes, then the kids kids knew like why I was going to be gone. And one time we actually even had a transfer on Thanksgiving Day, and it's one of those things where flexibility when it comes to surrogacy. And I remember thinking, well, my kids, we'll eat turkey no matter what day it is. It doesn't matter. And it was just one of those things where, again, like in the grand scheme of things, my family eating turkey on a Thursday versus a Friday versus these people having a baby, that they've wanted for so long, it was kind of a no-brainer. And so I'd ask them on things like that, like, are you okay if we're doing this? Or, are you okay with that? I also would constantly check in with them, and just see, like, do you have any questions? Are there any concerns? And, when you have that open dialogue with your kids, no matter how young, it's great because you could talk to them about those things. Let's see here.
It's so weird, like, talking about this, like, so many different memories are coming. Like, I remember with Natasha, or not, with the second one, I think, or maybe we went with Natasha and Anjali too, when we were at the doctor's office with you or something. I remember meeting, maybe it was getting Harper, I remember meeting the intended parents and, like, waiting in the doctor's office with you, and they're just explaining stuff. I was like, okay.
Yeah. So, and Jody was saying, I can't believe it's been 10 years. Very cool. Oh, yes. And Jody was my ride home from the hospital, Jody, if you remember. So she got to hold Natasha and Anjali as well. And that's one of the things, every relationship is different with intended parents. Sometimes you might get closer, and sometimes, you discuss things through the journey, and then once it's over, it's kind of over, and maybe you hear from them now and then. It just kind of depends. And I really loved, like, my first journey. One of the things that was really cool is because I lived in a very small town at the time, and kids were having questions and adults were having questions, and I was a business owner in that town, so of course people would come in and ask questions all the time. And one of the things that I loved was that George and Sanj actually came and brought the babies about a month later, and had an open house at my house, so that way any of the kids, do you remember that? Yeah, any of the kids or our neighbors or my customers, anybody who had questions about any of that were, it was just one of those things where they could come and meet them, and they could meet George and Sanj, and they could meet the babies, and they could see, like, again, grand scheme of things, like what this looks like. And a lot of times, people might have ideas of what this might look like in the beginning, but once you reach that end point, and see that, like, oh yeah, this is about family creation. And even though it's, maybe not all people have to go this route to get there, their family is no less valid than any of our own. So let me check. I'm just going to check. Hi, Melinda. Hi, Kristen. I'm just looking to see, making sure. Hi, Selena. Making sure I did not miss anybody's questions. Cool. Somebody said, thank you, Ruby. So yeah. And I guess I should take this time to thank you for, answering our questions, and because you didn't have to, so thank you. She wasn't going to be grounded if she said no, everybody. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to look real quick just on some of these questions. Let's see here. Oh, well, this one we kind of already talked about. Yeah. Do you have a relationship with any of the families that your mom's helped? And you mentioned, that we went and met and got to see baby Alexander for spring break one year in Hawaii.
Went to Disneyland.
Yeah, I went to Disneyland. Yeah.
That I remember. I thought that was really cute because you were still pregnant and we went, and then you had, like, the first visit on your belly and stuff.
To Disneyland. Yeah. That was a great trip. That was a 29-week twins pregnancy Disneyland trip that both my OB and my intended parents gave us permission to go with my intended parents. And yeah, that was a fun time. And same thing, like, it's, even if you, like, other people, maybe they, the intended parents might write a letter or, just say hi to the kids. I remember the first time that Miles and Stephen came over from Australia to meet the kids. Like, I had already met them, but when they came to meet the kids, they brought them, remember, like, the stuffed animal, like the wombat and the koala bear, and then the, what are those again? Boomerangs. Yeah, I brought them boomerangs and, like, stuff from Australia. So a lot of times when you have, like, international intended parents, it's amazing what your kids can learn from that, whether it's, certain words in their language or what their customs may be.
How koalas are raccoons.
Yeah, exactly. How koalas are raccoons of Australia. And they pee in trees. Yes, my kids were very enthralled by all of that, for sure. Let's see here. We've already did, and a lot of these questions, it sounds like, a lot of people constantly have the exact same questions over and over again. So that's cool. Let's see. If there's one thing you think all surrogates should share with their children about the process, what do you think that would be? Is there anything in particular?
I feel like we've already talked about a lot of it, just kind of showing them who the intended parents are and kind of keep asking oh, whose baby am I carrying? Oh, like so and so's and stuff like that. I just keep them really involved with it too. When you said secret, don't keep it secret because they'll definitely be confused. I think I definitely would have been if I was why is my mom pregnant? And
and especially as an older child where Ruby, got to see me be pregnant, go to a hospital and come home with a baby twice because she had 2 little brothers. And so, if you didn't say anything and then you went away and you came back and there's no baby, your kid might be like, wait, what's happening here? Let's see. And I think that anybody else, as we're kind of winding down here, let's see, we got another thank you, Ruby, for sharing. The other thing too is, feel free, those of you who, whether if you're watching it live or if you're watching it and it's not live anymore, if you have any questions, obviously you could make a comment and, I can go back and either ask Ruby about it or answer it myself if it's a question for me. Again, there are several resources in our resource section, like blog posts about, how to communicate these things to your job, to your children, letting people know. It's kind of like a coming out process in a way for, being a surrogate, because everybody just usually assumes that that's your baby, and that's not the case. Let's see. So I'm just looking down my list because I did not want to lose anything here. And it looks like, do we do one? Yeah, were you surprised when you found out your mom was doing a second or third journey?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I maybe the third time I was kind of
again. Yeah.
I just had 2 sets of twins. What are you doing?
Right.
But then I'll look back in the pictures and stuff of you in the hospital, and a lot of times I tell people when they're oh my gosh, she had 8 kids, including Preston, Sawyer, and I. I'm yeah, but in all the pictures, she's literally open in surgery and she's smiling about it and everything.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, no, and that's just it. Again, you have to enjoy, pregnancy and birth in order to want to do this. A lot of times people will go oh, I would never do that. And I'm good. If you don't think you want to do it, then don't do it. Because it definitely, surrogacy is not for everyone. That's for sure. Let's see here. Oh, this is a great one. What impact has this experience had on the person you are now?
I think I'm definitely a lot more open and stuff like that, and letting people tell me different things about themselves too. I think definitely with the whole LGBTQ community, I definitely understand that so much more than an average person would. We were talking about just the effects of social media, and because I was so young and it wasn't really a thing yet, it was oh, this is how you can be. You can marry a boy, girl, whoever you want, and it's totally okay. Versus now, where I think it's definitely a big you have to do this and you have to stick by this. But because I grew up with that, it really helped.
Okay, cool, awesome. And I'm looking, and I think that's pretty much it. Let's look right here. Oh, Selena says, thanks for sharing, guys. I learned a few things, even though we've talked about this tons of times. Yep. And it is. And, for those of you, if you end up being a partner of a surrogate or a friend of a surrogate who just happens upon this, a lot of times, we're really open to discussing certain things, but there's, and if you want to make sure that it's okay with them, you could always, ask them instead of coming out with your first question. You could always say I've got a few questions about your surrogacy. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? And then they'll let you know, whether they're okay with that or not. And for the most part, a lot of us surrogates love to talk about our experiences, and Ruby jokes around about, me doing it a second time or a third time. My dad felt the same way, where he's again, my goodness, Kelly. And I was but I loved it. And even myself, I thought I'd do it one time. I came into surrogacy saying, I've always wanted to be a surrogate. Let's do this. But, it's one of those things where I did it one time and I was like, that was amazing. And whether that was because that was George and Sanj and their family, or whether it was because, Apache, and and Menaka were hugging me and thanking me for helping make them, aunties and grandmas. And I got to see, like, oh my gosh, like how easy it was for me to have my own family. And it's not that easy for others. So to be able to help other people is just amazing.
I was gonna add on.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
But like how you said, making them aunties and like grandmas and all them, I feel like also like we're a part of that family too, and stuff. Because I remember we'd visit them and they're like, "No, call me aunt." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think
nice.
definitely it's cool. It's kind of like almost. I always say that my mom's womb was like my hand-me-down or whatever because I was like the first one, and then Preston Sawyer, Tasha Anjali, getting her for Alex. So
yeah,
it's cool. It's like a little family that you can have and stuff.
Yeah, you were the first one in my womb.
Yeah.
So there you go. There you go. So as we finish up today, like I said, if you have any other questions for Ruby or myself, feel free. You can also email me at Kelly, Kelly, at growinggenerations.com. Of course, if you are a surrogate with Gigi already, chances are you are a part of our Facebook group, where it's a closed group that's just for Gigi surrogates. And of course, you guys know that you can always ask me there, that stuff there too. Plus, when you ask questions on that group, it's nice because then there's all these other surrogates that, let you know like what they did with their kids or how they told them or what books they're using. And before we leave, I just wanted to share one more thing that I thought was really cool. My best friend Stacy, who is also a surrogate, and I met her from us both being surrogates, and we used to have play dates with Ruby and her kids as well. One of her sets of intended parents wrote this book called Xander's Story, and it is basically a story about their surrogacy process with my friend Stacy. And it's great because it's about how Xander became their son. And it says, join Xander as he learns about his unique and personal journey. Daddy and Papa tell his story, starting at the very beginning when he was just a wish, to years later when he became a gift. And so it is one of those things where, there's so many of these books that are out there that could really explain to your kids at various ages, what it is that you're doing. And so that way, not everybody's going to grow up and want to be a surrogate when they grow up or whatever. But, but I also love that, like when sometimes Ruby will come home and say, oh, we had to write a school paper about, who their hero is or something amazing. And
no.
Yes, I know. And then I'm like, I'm not going to cry. But then, and she'll say like, oh, I read about you and your surrogacies. And I think that's so cool, especially from a teenager. You take what you can get. Anyway, so if that's it, you guys, we're going to go ahead and I guess sign off. Thank you so much, Miss Ruby, for being with me here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Awesome. And have a great weekend, you guys. And again, Sunday is Mother's Day, so, have a good time. Sunday is Mother's Day. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Bye, guys. Bye. Have a good one.